So Gavin Newsom's special session of the California Legislature has come to a close. We've already looked at one piece of legislation through the lens of the litigation. Perhaps it's time to take a step back and look at the entire session as a whole. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That's right, we are hitting the special session of the legislature one more time. I know that we did a video last week talking specifically about the bill for the $25 million to go into the litigation fund. Perhaps today we can talk about that more on the legislative approach, because to talk about this with us today, we have brought back the legislative director of CRPA. He's also the host of Firing Line Radio on AM 590, The Answer. You can catch him there every Saturday at 1 p.m. That, of course, is Rick Travis. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to dive into this, but really quick, guys, as always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps pushing out this information with the algorithms on YouTube, and it's a great way for you to directly contribute to Second Amendment litigative, legislative, and cultural efforts here in the state. So, Rick, but before we really dive into this, I did have a few quotes that I wanted to bring up just so that everybody could be aware of the sentiment. I'm sure that we can feel it a little bit, but Jacob, this is from Gavin Newsom's own website. Can you bring this up for me really quick? These quotes go like this. With potentially billions of dollars in federal funding on the line if the president-elect follows through on his promises, we must be and we are ready to act on day one, said Attorney General Rob Bonta. I'm looking forward to working with the governor and the legislature to ensure my office has the resources we need to meet the demands of the moment and robustly defend California's people, progress, and values. Second quote right here, you can see where we can work with the incoming federal administration, we will. Senate President Pro Tem Mike McGuire said, where the rights, safety, and economic security of Californians may be in danger, we will be prepared and we will respond. New and returning members of the Senate all took a solemn oath today to defend California. We believe in that oath, and we will act accordingly with the governor and our colleagues in the assembly. And then finally, the third one, while we always hope to collaborate with our federal partners, California will be ready to vigorously defend our interests and values from any unlawful action by the incoming Trump administration, said Assembly Budget Chair Jesse Gabriel. We know from President-elect Trump's statements and from the more than 120 lawsuits that California filed during the first Trump administration that we must be prepared to defend ourselves. We are not going to be caught flat-footed. And I guess just to add a little bit more context into there, you have to understand that when these guys say they want to protect Californians' constitutional rights, what they actually mean is protect what they perceive to be constitutional rights under their ideology, because obviously we have a great track record of them not caring about Californian Second Amendment rights. So this is something pretty specific, and I don't even know necessarily how you would define some of these things within the context of constitutional rights that they're going to be Trump-proofing here in California. But Rick, I mean, I'm curious what you think. If I saw these quotes in a history book, I would think that somebody's preparing for war. I think that's a sentiment that we can probably feel in the state at the moment. We know that a lot of the people within our legislature, as well as our governor, does not like Trump and what his administration is promising to bring. Is that the sentiment and feeling that we're getting out of the Capitol as well?
Yeah, they don't like accountability, and part of what's coming is accountability. They don't like being told that they were wrong. They don't like being told that their appraisal of Californians and people across this great nation is not only offensive to the vast majority, but also has been wrong. They have saw themselves as academic elitists. They have looked down their nose at any other college that wasn't an Ivy League college or a place that they attended and said that, obviously, if you didn't go where I went, you're an idiot. You don't know anything. And that's just our attitude. And I think they're starting to see there's a lot of people that make more money than them that didn't go to the schools they went to. There's a lot of people that actually have read the Constitution of the United States, understand it, realize that it's more about than just a couple of items in the First Amendment. There's several items that are protected, and those are protected by the Second Amendment, things that we talk about all the time on this channel. But I think what's more important, Kevin, or just as important, is to realize politics is warfare. And I think that's one of the deceptions that a lot of people don't realize. It is absolutely warfare. And they are afraid because they have been doing illegal acts too long. I mean, the laundry list of stuff that's come out in this 2 day special session is nothing new to any of our listeners. But I mean, you got the Office of Government Accountability that's coming out, with the Trump administration, and they're going to be looking at some big items, say like the bullet train, that billions with a B were given by the federal government to make that happen. And we have what, less than 2 miles of track and a partial station, and we've never ran a train on it, and nothing's happened. But of course, that shouldn't shock anybody to the billions of dollars given to California to fight the homeless issue. And yeah, that's been highly unsuccessful. And we can go down that laundry list. But meanwhile, we have a governor and a legislature and state employees that while they look at you and me and everybody else along the lines of rules for me and rules for thee, here's one of the biggest ones in this budget crisis. Kevin, the vast majority of people throughout state government haven't paid their taxes. And nor has the governor. And he just, quote, purchased another mansion. And if you look at the taxes on that mansion and the taxes on the house in Fair Oaks, his monthly tax bill cannot be paid by his monthly income from being governor. So there are a lot of questions that are going to hit that office and the legislature come January when we reopen that is going to put a grind to a lot. And they're going to whine, they're going to gripe, they're going to blame everything they can on Trump because they've been blaming everything they could on Trump for the past 8 years.
Yeah, so definitely some more to look forward to as far as following along with all of those complaints, which I'm sure a lot of those will turn into lawsuits. And as I already mentioned last week, we put out a video from the litigation side specifically on this bill that's been proposed to put $25 million into a litigation fund for California. In Trump's first term, we saw that I think we spent $41 million in litigation against Trump as a state. We saw the litigative side, but I'm curious from the legislative side, where is this money going to be coming from? Are they proposing to take it out of taxes, or is there a fund that already exists that they're pulling from? What bucket is getting smaller in order to get that money into the litigation fund?
Well, I think you bring up a really good point that it's a good time to remind everybody. I've taught political communication at the university level, like many people have. And one of the things I used to tell people is whenever you have a public policy being introduced that has a price tag to it, one of the first questions you should be asking is who's losing money? Because there's a finite amount of money. And to that point, California is already, before we even hit January 1, $2 billion in the hole. That's in the red, not in the black. $2 billion. That's a lot of money. But that's not the half of it. According to the Office of Legislative Accountability, we're looking at probably in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 billion in the hole before January is done. They're not going to be able to collect that money. This is after being in an over $80 billion deficit in 2024. So where's that money going to come from? They're going to have to raise money at the gas pump. They're going to have to raise money in taxes. They're going to go after probably firearms owners yet again. They're going to go the usual wells and resources. And at some point, the people have to say, no, we're done. It's enough. I'm quite frankly shocked that we haven't already done that as a state, because what is at stake right now is not just your constitutional rights, folks. What's at stake is your financial ability to survive in this state. And we have a governor and we have a legislature that by and large doesn't have a clue of what it's like to be the average Californian living here and what we're fighting up against. And so I think you're seeing a lot more people we saw throughout the election. But to the point of that 25 million, number one, the governor lost the vast majority of the over 100 lawsuits they filed against the first Trump administration. They'll lose again. They'll take whatever little optical claim they can and try to do a victory lap with it to raise money. But what's that money actually for? You could have heard it this week from Assemblyman Gallagher, head of the Republican Assembly. You could have heard it from Senator Jones, head of the Senate Republicans. They both said the same thing. This is not about suing Trump. This is about making a lame duck governor in Gavin Newsom and a pretty moronic attorney general that wants to focus on everything but public safety, who are raising money for the governor's 2028 presidential campaign. And that's where the money is going to go. It's not going to go to lawsuits. This is nothing more than him campaigning to be the lead dog for 2028.
Well, that's definitely an interesting perspective. And I guess in some sense, I hope that you're right and we don't necessarily see a whole lot of litigation, especially given the fact that, like what you're saying, the culture in California is kind of changing. This isn't exactly an 80-20 state. Over 40% of the state voted for Trump, which means that what you're claiming that you're going to be protecting against, almost half of the people in this state voted for. So I find that kind of interesting. But,
Evan, I want to go back to something you just said. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but one of the things is the mainstream media is still pushing this 40-60 split in California. California is comprised of over 20,000 precincts. And when you go to a lot of those precincts, precincts, are not dark blue or dark red. A lot of them tend to be the lightest of blue or lightest of pink, on the verge of going back and forth. That's where the majority lies. And when you look at that majority, many of those precincts flipped. It doesn't show up on the pretty little maps. So it looks like, say like a county like LA. Oh, LA is all blue. No, LA is not all blue. In fact, there were places that were dark blue just 2 years ago, Kevin, that were the palest of blues. They were within a point of going Republican. And so when you look up and down the state is closer to a 50-50 split. What they were able to do was do it by counties. But if you get into precinct battle, those numbers look much different. General population vote for the President Trump, yes, it's like a 39, I think 61 is what it looks like it's going to finally shake out to. But if you look at candidates up and down, many candidates won by less than 1,000 votes. That shows a much tighter race. So yeah, you might look at the Gray Duarte race, which is Congressional District 13, and say, oh, well, Gray won. Yeah, Gray won by less than a couple of hundred votes. That is not a blue area. That is we don't know what color area we are at. And there were multiple districts like that.
Well, perhaps some prelude for the some upcoming videos in the next 2 years, looking at the 2028 elections, looking to flip a lot of those precincts and cities.
26.
Yeah, 2026. You're right. I am kind of curious, though. This bill for the litigation fund is primarily what's being reported on as far as the mainstream media is concerned. What else do we see that is coming out of this special session of the legislature that's worth mentioning?
Yeah, well, within just less than 2 full days, in addition to swearing in new legislators, of which we had several, almost a third of the legislature is brand new first-termers, which is going to make for some interesting new dynamics. I do want to point out for all the naysayers that said there were going to be no flippable seats to Pro 2A Republican candidates. We got two of them across. One of my favorite, I'll do a shout out to, is Leticia Castillo. That was definitely a David Goliath fight against the Cervantes family out there in Assembly District 58. And she was able to overcome. She was able to be sworn in this week, even before AP called the race. And I think that says a lot. I think a couple of things that we have to look at is there are some new things happening in the legislature. Both Rivas, who runs the Assembly, and McGuire, who runs the Senate, are not going to be Newsom's lapdogs. And they're making that very clear. So while they had this special session because the governor forced it, both of those individuals said jointly and separately that the governor is not going to get a carte blanche, this is what I want, like he has in years past. He is going to have to bring it to the legislature, and they're going to put it through the ringer to decide if yes or no. So I think you're going to see a little bit more tension between the legislature as both of these gentlemen and their teams respectfully try to push the governor back and push the executive office and reduce its capabilities in the state, which will be interesting because that will create some infighting and some other issues. The other thing is both of those men chose to reduce the number of bills. Kevin, we have more bills in the state than almost any other state in the nation, which is generally around 5,000. They put a 30% limit on that, dropping it down to 3,500. It's a 30% reduction. And that was incredible. So, on one hand, does it make it a little bit more difficult for people like me to get a bill introduced? Sure. But it also makes it harder for everybody else to get bad legislation introduced. And it also cuts down a number and forces legislators not to just look at any group and say, sure, I'll do that, but instead have to say, no, I have 2 years, 35 bills. I got to plot this out a little bit. I got to slow my roll a little bit. And they were also very firm on extending that beyond. We had some people that ran 60 bills last year, and they said no, it would have to be a over the top reason to open up that cap for any legislator. And so they suggested working together rather than trying to create new bills. So that's going to be a change. The other change that's going to be interesting is, Senator Fetterman out of Pennsylvania made quite the change in decorum in the nation's capital by wearing shorts and hoodies, which I'm
Yeah.
sure you're all for the hoodie thing.
Absolutely.
But there are some strong arguments that when you're representing the people's business and you're going up there, you dress appropriately. There's things I would love to wear that I wear normally when I'm at home, not at work, but I'm representing everybody in California when I go up there. So I dress appropriately. That dress code was completely wiped out during this 2-day session. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. I've been around long enough to remember the days of Willie Brown, even the more recent days of a Reggie Jones Sawyer, who both those men held a tight grip on their committees and a tight dress decorum. I even had a conversation with one of them when they called me out for not wearing my tie pulled all the way to the top. And I said, well, a tie is a symbol of respect. And right now I don't, sir. And, and that kind of banter has some benefits to it, but that's not going to exist now because no one has to wear a tie. No one has to wear a suit. In fact, people could probably get away wearing sandals, which I think lessens the seriousness of those buildings and what the business is that we're supposed to be conducting.
Well, I guess overall, it kind of sounds like you're, perhaps an expectation of total unity, giving Gavin Newsom exactly what he wants and what he's asking for, or at least the perception of that going in. Looks like it's turning out to be a little bit of a mixed bag, which, potentially could be optimistic going forward. I guess, what are your final thoughts on this, looking forward to the end of the special session and then on into the next year of legislation? What's that looking like for you right now?
Well, the special session has concluded. They're on their way back home, which is yay. Love it when they're on recess and they're not playing in the Capitol and they're back in their own neighborhoods. So that will be good. They will come back on January 6th. They've changed the calendar for the next year. So we're all, making the necessary changes to that. I think what you're going to see is a little bit of a slower roll on a lot of the legislation for the state. You'll see some grandstanding politically as January 20th hits and Trump takes office. And I'm sure you're going to see the feds push some of their agenda in that first 100 days. And so if you look at that, that is going to give us basically till mid-March, which is about the time that the legislature is getting ready to pivot from one house to the other. So my assumption, Kevin, is we're going to see across the board, not just in the Second Amendment community, some interesting tactical gun amends, water bills becoming tax bills, et cetera, just complete changes. I also think we're going to see some longer session days where we might be there till midnight, not just on the last day of the session, but during some key breaks. I feel coalitions are going to be much, much stronger and much more needed. And I'm also looking at, we do the budget cuts that a lot of the meetings that are designed to include people throughout the state of California, whether it be fish and game meetings or others, they've already got set up for the next 6 months that everything happens in Sacramento. So that is going to make the battle much more focused in a localized area. And realize this is all during the time of the nation coming up on its 250th anniversary, kicking that off in April. And we'll be a part of that kickoff, as well as our own 150th anniversary that we're kicking off. And so I think there's a lot of moving pieces that are going to make this a very interesting year. But my final thought would be everyone be excited because we have people that have mobilized, we have people that are continuing to mobilize, and we've got about 250,000 people that will be able to vote their first time in less than 2 years. And so we got a lot of people to educate, get registered, and get across the board and break some of the strangleholds. And we're close to doing it.
Absolutely. A lot to be optimistic about, a lot to be prepared for as well. I think something that I'm trying to tell myself that, I shouldn't necessarily lose sight of is that we have seen the California governor and legislature take aim at the firearms community with retaliatory legislation in the past. So there's no reason why they, there would be anything stopping them from doing that again. Obviously, something to follow along with and continue to watch out for. But that's what you're here for. That's what organizations like CRPA are here for, to put a safeguard over things like that. And we're going to continue fighting. Rick, I know you're a busy guy. I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for being on with us today.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Kevin.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like videos like this, you want to continue getting this content, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos and to this channel. It's really working nowadays. We're hitting the algorithms. We're getting this information out to more and more people. And it's a great way for you to directly contribute to the firearms litigation, legislative efforts, and community efforts that CRPA puts forward. So please, if you can, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to those videos. Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next one.